That would be good. First of all, we'd like to thank Hayes for a wonderful introduction. I think we couldn't say it better, so you might just skip the first part of our lecture. And we would also like to thank the Architectural League for inviting us to participate in such a wonderful lecture series. We'd also like to quickly extend our thanks to family and friends, colleagues, some of whom have come a quite a long distance to be here.
So without further ado, tonight we're going to talk about aluminum flashing, some lengths of rope, steel cable, piles of sticks, plywood shelving. We're going to talk a little bit about the shape of the suburban house, and we're going to get into the American garage. Now, I know some of you are probably looking at your watch, wondering how we're going to talk about these things for 45 minutes, but bear with us. We can do it. We're architects. We love to talk. We want to preface the talk with images of these somewhat ubiquitous things, because these are the real ingredients, the basic building blocks of our projects today.
So objectively, obviously we realize that these things may not be perceived as the most elegant items that exist on the face of the earth. But for us, it's not their given states that matter as much as the actions that we've taken upon them or with them. It's these actions that give the project life and a memory of human intervention. In this, we do find similarities to Richard Serra's verb list, where a series of actions is dictated as problematic moving forward into his pieces. So for us, again, the very basic notion of a material input or an elemental input, the action that's taken to it, resulting in the architecture. This kind of relationship is evident in almost every architecture, but I think for us, it is this action, this architecture as verb, that's most critical to our work up to this point.
So let's start with aluminum flashing. This is step flashing. You get this at any lumber yard. It's pieces of 5 by 7 inch, very thin sheets of aluminum. And it's basically the stuff that keeps rain from dripping onto your ceiling. However, in this instance, we've employed it as a basic element in an architectural system that creates a surface. This is an intervention in a gallery space that's entitled version 3. It's called version 3 on a basic level because it was the third time that we installed such an installation. They kept getting increasingly larger and larger. But also called version 3 because it takes 3 basic steps to build it. In fact, if you were so inclined to create a version 4, you could go on our website and download the instruction manual, which you see an image of here. And as you can see, there's a few required items, but only 3 basic steps. The good news is aluminum flashing is pretty cheap. It only takes 3 steps. The bad news is to beat version 3, you're going to have to fold more than 40,000 pieces of the aluminum flashing. I'll take you through a step-by-step, though, don't worry. First, if you start with the basic bundle of the flashing, and a drill template, you drill 3 very precisely located holes. Then, utilizing a custom-made jig that we designed, you expertly fold along the diagonal length, 2 folds in each card. What this is basically doing is creating a 3-dimensional unit out of a 2-dimensional piece of material. We watched a lot of movies while we did this. It's pretty mindless. We went through all the trilogies: Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. A lot of folding. After about 10,000, we got smart enough to hire somebody. This is not Charlie Brown, this is Matt, who is also a clown in his spare time. He's an actor. But he had an amazing ability to just stay focused on this incredible, tedious task of riveting, which is the third step of the process, riveting all these folded pieces of aluminum together. You can see him here in our shop, riveting these units into a small section of the surface, which could then be pieced together into a larger carpet of the surfaces. And the inherent properties of these as they begin to get riveted together allows them to actually have a grain, and they were very flexible. We could roll them up. And what you see here is what we call the sushi rolls. These are the carpets rolled up, ready to be delivered to the gallery in Brooklyn. And when they're delivered, they're able to be stitched together into a seamless, uniform surface that you can see has an incredible ability to undulate. It's got flexibility in both the direction of the rivet rotation, but also the inherent thinness of the material lets it be a little malleable in the other direction. So we were able to use standoffs from the floor and the wall, you can see one here, to begin to create a three-dimensional topography that the surface adhered to. And you can see that it began to have different qualities of opacity and transparency depending on your vantage point. Here's a close-up detail of one of the units, or of the surface, and you can begin to see one unit with two folds. And of course, it's riveted to its adjacent pieces. Here's another view of the installation. It was a joint installation with a sculptor named Eric Drury who did these sculptural pieces that hung inside of the space that our surface created.
So for the next project, we'll start by talking about manila rope. The primary component of an installation piece we entitled Drawn. The name of the piece comes from the fact that, like a drawing or a sketch, the piece tries to render a solid object with a series of lines instead of surfaces. The installation occurs in a 32-foot tall lobby space in a development in Harlem here in New York. To achieve this, at a very basic level, these are images from the digital modeling process. A digital model is created of a three-dimensional object. So you see on the right a solid object. That object is then intersected with the 725 lines that make up the planar grid that defines the shape of the sculpture. Where these lines intersect with the object, these lines become solid. In essence, the final project is a representation of the object using these solid lines. So this was the digital model version of this process. So then this is a section cut through half of the sculpture, for example. So you can see where that object is, the solid object was once represented, and it's being intersected with the vertical lines. And these are the representations of each of the sections through the sculpture. So within any one of these single lines, there's two primary components. We have fishing line and the manila rope. The material choice here was really based as much on pure linear foot. We heard 18,000 feet. Well, we have 23,000 linear feet, which just meant that we had to be even cheaper. The fishing line is used in the areas where we don't want the object to be seen as represented. Obviously for the thinness of the fishing line, makes it relatively transparent, and the manila rope is used for the solid portions of the installation. And then, of course, we needed to add secondary pieces or materials to allow this thing to be installed. So in order to attach, whoops, sorry about that. So in order to attach the fishing line to the manila rope, we used a simple wire tie with a very basic knot detail. And at the top of the installation, at the bottom of the installation, we used very basic lead weights, also fishing weights, that we were glued to the nylon string. So just to provide just enough tension to keep the sculpture in its shape. So you can see here, this is one of those individual lengths, one of the 729. So this is about 32 feet of a combination of rope and fishing line wrapped up, ready for shipment. And you can see its code F4 refers to the placement in plan for this length. So we did a lot of mock-ups, of course, in our fabrication shop, really just to test different densities, thickness of material, thickness of rope, and even patterning of rope. This is an example of a cluster of just 20 of the linear elements. And then as we move to the installation on site, you can see the top plinth, the mounting plinth of the installation, and one of our guys helping us string this thing together. Obviously, we're starting in one corner and moving in both directions to complete the overall sculpture. So here's a view. Obviously, when you look at it in from certain points of view, it begins to dissolve, right? So it kind of achieved exactly what we were hoping it would. It suspends itself between the material and the immaterial. And looking at a detail, you can begin to pick up some of the connection details, the wire ties themselves. At some points, the fishing line really begins to disappear. And then another detail view as well. And you can see just how intricate some of the geometry becomes, where it's transitions from fishing line to manila rope, back to fishing line, and then to the next unit of manila rope.
Okay, so now we're on to sticks, another relatively cheap building material. By now you may be starting to see a commonality in our work, low budget. However, in this case, the sticks are the primary element in the composition of what we call the peel house. This is a project in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. It's an addition onto an existing home. And the program for this was to create a separate but accessible space for the 92-year-old mother and grandmother who was being brought into the family fold. The existing house is a very typical suburban house on a wooded suburban lot. And due to some of the site constraints, we needed to kind of step the building volume back. The addition contains bedroom, living spaces, sitting areas, and bathroom, as well as some outdoor deck spaces. And what we began to look at was a system of exterior surface that could help bind these kind of irregular volumes together and give them a little bit of unity from the exterior, but also a system that could begin to be deployed and engaged in providing different elements of screening, privacy, solar shading, and so on and so forth. So here you can see this surface by itself without the architectural volumes that it's wrapping around, and it begins to turn upon itself, weave around, wrap underneath, intersect with itself. We utilize these wood slats as the basic kind of element to create this surface. And we really were thinking of this more as a woven surface, something that could be pulled apart in places, dissolved, put back together, made more dense in other places, and that this really began to be something that we could utilize to give a little bit more meaning to one area of the addition versus the other. And the logic that we imparted onto this surface was that of an ABA rhythm. And so here's an axonometric diagram that shows how each time the surface turns a corner or folds, it changes the orientation of the slats. So here, for example, these are A slats, which finger joint into B slats. And in some cases, they come together to create a solid surface. Now, Alex and I have an architectural process where we have what we think is a great idea, and then we realize it's full of problems. So we spend the rest of our time trying to solve those problems. And after doing the mock-up that you just saw, we quickly realized that the problem in the surface as it wraps all the way around this building is that if we did not maintain a very strict horizontal datum, by the time the slats reached or intersected themselves on the other side of the house, they're no longer an A slat, they might be a B slat or a C slat or a D slat. So we had to think of a way to help register these. And so what we came up with was water jet cutting a piece of Corten steel channel. And the pattern of the cut takes this kind of zipper shape, so that after the machine is finished cutting it, we could pull it apart, and then we have inherently an A side and a B side with opposing slats that are crenellated, so that then we could use these finger or teeth to help us register our slats as they work their way around the building. So what we did is we took our entire surface in all its complexity and cut it in section at regular intervals. And then we could begin to lay all of these out in a fabrication detail to show how these steel zipper cut frame pieces would stand off from the building volume in different increments to help hold this surface. Here you can see the house in construction, and the slats create a basic rain screen, which means that they're not keeping the water out. The house has a waterproof surface, and then the steel zippers get stood off with brackets where they stand or bolted to the deck to create the armature for our slats. And then these zippers help create these critical intersections where we get these finger jointing. And the registration marks help the construction process go relatively easy. Here I am again, actually doing the work while Alex is taking the picture. This is a place where the slats begin to peel off into the landscape to create a fence. And here you can see a critical juncture where A slats fit into B slats and combine to create a solid surface. We're also able to create operable sections of these slats. For example, this peel here hides behind it a big glass sliding door, so that when the sun, this is a solar south-facing door, when the sun is bright, she can close these slatted doors, open the glass doors, and get natural ventilation while the sun is blocked. While at the same time, those big doors slide open. And when they're open, they create a secluded part of the deck that Louise, the client, could block off the rest of her family when she was sick of them. And here's her little private deck at night. This is a shot from the inside, actually before the slats were installed. You can see it's a nice wooded site with great views. And we tried to bring those natural kind of materials inside as well.
So onto the suburban ranch home typology. This was actually an existing ranch home in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. It was the context for a project that we worked on for a mother and a single mother and her two sons. The basic program included an additional living room space kitchen space, as well as a semi-private loft space, kind of a getaway for the grown-ups, if you will. The basic ranch home, with its very strong geometrical presence, kind of the elongated extrusion, is something that we wanted to work with and not against. Also, for budgetary purposes, we said, okay, we'll maintain the infrastructure of that existing ranch home. We'll just continue the addition out. So when many people see this project, they assume it's a new project, but it's actually the shape and the form is derived from the context around which and in which it was constructed. So the other primary element on the interior is two continuous surfaces that bifurcate the public and the private zones, which you can see the surface here and the surface here. Those two surfaces expand to allow for an increase in size of the public space, and they compress to create the corridor and the more private spaces. This continuous volume, this extrusion of the ranch home, is sliced in one location. What this allows us to do is to pull up and out this form of the semi-private loft, hence giving the project its name, the pull house. So with that pull up, it allows for a sunken seating area below the loft space, as well as giving the living room spaces more room to breathe in the central space of the home. So you can see here in this construction image the existing home infrastructure in the addition. And you can also see here, our gable end is a minimalized version of the ranch home gable end. So no eaves, just very clean, and obviously a different tectonic. The loft space itself, the object that's pulled away from the extrusion of the ranch home, we talked a lot about where it was located, and what we decided was that it was better to be left as a divergence within that overall elongated form, so that it's not brought to the end of the ranch. We actually like its kind of cut nature, and a finished view of the exterior of the home. So this is that loft space pulled up. This is a finished view looking at the exterior of the gable end. It kind of begins to tell the story about the overall section of the project, the primary living space, the seating area below the elevated loft. So, at a very basic level, we tried to use very minimal surfaces and kind of geometrical approaches to create a relatively complex space. You can also begin to see the introduction of these more primary colors. Those denote the spaces that are carved from these very relentless continuous surfaces. These are the spaces that operate perpendicular to these continuities of interior and exterior surface. And those same spaces are rendered on the exterior as well. So they puncture the continuous bamboo surfaces on the interior as well as the white cedar on the exterior. And then the views at night. So again, the interior view looking from this is the kind of informal entry at the kitchen space. So you see the two continuous bamboo surfaces that define that public space going back into the private corridor, with the loft on the upper left of the image. And a view from the corridor leading back to the bedrooms, back towards the seating area itself. A view from an access to the basement. So this is under the stair that goes up to the loft space. And from that same vantage point, turning back towards the entry, again, this blue carved space that signals one of these perpendicular spaces. And we really wanted to articulate that formally. So you have the continuous surface of bamboo and this very knife edge where those two conditions intersect. A view from that formal entry door into the space. And a view within the loft itself. All of our projects are a labor of love, but I got Jeff on this particular piece of the project. It's amazing. I showed up many times at the site where he had a Dazuki saw, which is a, a Japanese saw. It's brilliant. Hand carving some of these curves.
I think for us, the project was a real exploration of how a set of very simple geometric moves with the exterior of the volume could create a set of very complex spatial conditions on the interior. And we often get the remark of people who experience the house that they're surprised at how minimal it is on the exterior, but how complicated and complex the spaces are on the inside. So I think in that respect, it was successful.